I think Max Fried put it best. There are no secrets. Both sides know what the other has as the Braves will meet their NL East rival Phillies in the division series beginning Tuesday at Truist Park. This is BPTV Cory McCartney along with Grant McAuley. And the Braves won the season series, Grant, 11-8. That included 6 wins in 9 games at Atlanta. And this is just the second time since 1999 that the Braves are meeting a division rival in the postseason. How big of an element is that familiarity in your eyes?
I think it has to be a factor, as we were talking about, who would you rather play, the Phillies or the Cardinals? I always seem to land on the side of kind of the devil because you've had so many head-to-head matchups, and Max Fried's absolutely right. There are no secrets between these two clubs as far as that head-to-head battle goes. They know each other extremely well. Each one of them knows the strengths, the weaknesses, the key players, the key matchups, all of those things. It's not like studying for a brand new test against a team that you only saw a couple of times a year. So I do think being familiar with one another is obviously going to be a big story for this, but clearly with the way that these two teams close the year and both, getting into the postseason, the Braves doing it in dramatic fashion, I feel like by sweeping away the New York Mets, while the Phillies, they had to have a dramatic finish to their season as well in order to end an 11-year playoff drought. They both obviously got a lot to play for. The World Series is out in front of them, and I think it's going to be kind of fun to see two teams that should know each other really well square off in some very big games.
You want to talk about weaknesses? The weakness for both these teams is playing during the day. The Braves were 3 games below 500 during the day with the fewest wins of any postseason team with 24. But the Phillies were only 1 better with 25. They also finished 3 games below 500 in those situations. So somebody's got to win these first 2 games, which of course are going to be during the day. So let's dive into the lineups, rotation, bullpens, maybe give our predictions here for how this NLDS is going to play out. So let's start with the lineups. During the regular season, Matt Olson led the team with 5 homers against the Phillies. Austin Riley hit .351, also had a .921 OPS, which topped the Braves. Ronald Acuna Jr. drove in 11. Olson and Riley tied for the lead there with 10 home runs each. We know what this Braves lineup is predicated on the home runs. They led the National League with 243, second only to the Yankees. The Phillies had 3 guys with 20 or more, and that's only because Bryce Harper missed so much time. Who do you give the edge to here in terms of these lineups?
I would give the slight edge to the Braves, and maybe it's because I've seen them so much, but you cannot discount what the Phillies are capable of when they're clicking on all cylinders. They've got some professional hitters, some veteran guys. We saw what they were able to do against the St. Louis Cardinals team with a very good pitching staff that kind of had things lined up the first couple of days to do it the best that they could in that wild card series. And the Phillies, especially with that big 9th inning comeback, were just able to get the big hits when they needed to. But as you look at both of these lineups and both of these teams, and the Braves built so much on home runs, they hit 24 homers against the Phillies this year. That's the most Philadelphia allowed against any club all season long. It took 19 meetings, of course, to get that done, but I don't think that's a small fact because the Phillies and their pitching staff allowed the 5th fewest home runs in Major League Baseball with only 150 over the course of the 2022 season. The 4th fewest allowed, the Atlanta Braves with 148 home runs surrendered by the pitching staff. So they're very equally matched. I feel like these two clubs, there's a lot of parity, a lot of similarities between them. And if I'm looking at the lineups and just kind of picking the one that I feel like has that it factor because I've seen it before in big spots and in big situations and in the postseason, I'll give the slight edge to the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there. A couple of things, though. I think it was really key that last series that Bryce Harper starting to show signs. He missed so much time, and obviously he's playing with basically what is probably going to end up needing Tommy John surgery there. And obviously, getting him back and being able to be what he's capable of is a bad sign for the next team that's got to face him, which happens to be the Braves. Obviously, we talked a lot about the Olson, Swanson, Riley part of the lineup and how key that's been. Olson obviously ended on an absolute tear. He was the final NL player of the week. He came up big when it mattered most, as did Dansby Swanson, who had an 1,100 OPS in the last 6 games. Riley didn't finish as strong, but he did hit that home run off of Jacob deGrom to kickstart that series. It's very key because from September 1st to the 29th, that collective, they were in the midst of their worst months of the season. The Braves were 10th in FanGraph WAR, 10th in runs, but they were that 2 through 4 spots in the order that they've mainly led. They were 29th in weighted run created plus. From opening day until August, they were 5th. So they really need those guys to come through. I think that's a crucial part of that. And obviously with Kyle Schwarber, the National League leader in home runs, we know what that group's capable of. They can bash just as much as the Braves can. So that's going to be a major factor. But I agree with you. The slight edge there goes to the Braves. Yeah. So let's talk about these starting rotations here. Max Fried's going to get the start for game 1 opposite Ranger Suarez. So the potential here that both these guys could see action twice. Brian Snicker did say Monday he's leaning towards Kyle Wright in game 2. Looks like Zach Wheeler is going to get the ball for that second game for the Phillies. And of course, they could turn to Aaron Nola in game 3. We got a question mark going after this for the Braves in the terms of Spencer Strider and whether he's going to be available. Knowing what we know at this moment, who gets the edge in terms of these starting staffs?
It's hard not to give it to the Phillies just because they do have their full complement of their top 3 starters. And that's not a knock on Charlie Morton, who has the best postseason resume of any pitcher that the Braves have, bar none. But if you can have Spencer Strider rounding it out and starting in game 3, I think you're still going to come back to Charlie Morton in game 4, just based on the way that everything lays out and the travel days and the lack of off days in this series. But it's a different rotation, a different starting 3 if you've got Max Fried in game 1, Kyle Wright in game 2, and then throw in Spencer Strider in game 3, because the Phillies have 2 bona fide Cy Young contenders every single year in Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, and both of whom have pitched extremely well and are huge reasons why the Philadelphia Phillies got past the St. Louis Cardinals. And it's why it is huge for the Braves to try to take advantage of their matchup in game 1 against Ranger Suarez, who didn't start the year well against the Braves, but finished it extremely well over his final 3 starts. I would give, I'd say, the edge in terms of having it lined up the way that they want to, maybe a little bit more surprisingly towards the Phillies, because you knew you were going to see Suarez in this series. But in terms of kind of the key matchup and the pivot of this series and where it could kind of swing the momentum towards what you would think is the better rested club, throwing Max Fried in game 1 makes it a must-win scenario, as pretty much all game 1s are. So if I can give you a non-answer as an answer, it might actually be a push between these 2 clubs now that I've kind of gone through the mental exercise.
Okay, so the Phillies did lead the NL with a 17-4 fWAR. They were only second to the Astros in that department. Aaron Nola led all the majors with a 6.3 WAR. But you mentioned Ranger Suarez. Obviously, and as I said, he's going to get the ball in game 1. He really had his issue against right-handed hitters throughout the season, which could be, really crucial for Ronald Acuna Jr., Dansby Swanson, Austin Riley, William Contreras, Travis d'Arnaud. He was pretty good against the Braves as well. 1 run over 17 innings over his last 3 starts against them. It's really interesting with the Braves, though. You think about if you got to go with Charlie Morton in game 3, he had a 5.72 ERA during the regular season on the road compared to 3.05 at home. So if you've got the potential that, you can use Strider, maybe you think about Charlie Morton a little bit further down the line, if you can potentially line him up to get a start at Truist Park, which may be a lot more in his favor.
Yeah, you could, but as far as the starts in Truist Park, if Kyle Wright does take the ball after Max Fried in games 1 and 2, then you'd be looking at a game 5 scenario. And is that really where you'd want to turn to Charlie Morton? I mean, I guess you could. And again, I don't want to downplay the value that Charlie Morton has brought to the Braves staff since coming over. This has just been such a mercurial up and down season for him that it's just, you just don't know exactly what you're going to get. But if you're getting what you saw down the stretch, that's just something that the Braves can ill afford. However, Atlanta, and I know we'll talk about it, does have the strength of its bullpen to lean on, but where would that bullpen be at that point? What will the first couple of 3 games look like? You just kind of have to factor it all in. So it could be an interesting decision. Kyle Wright also throws extremely well at home at Truist Park. So that is an opportunity to have Wright on the mound in game 2, following up Max Fried and kind of lining it up to his strengths as well. And just hoping that the old wily veteran who has been there and done that, and as Brian Snicker says, been through all the wars, can give you the performance you need regardless of the venue whenever he's called upon.
So let's update on Spencer Strider here on the heels of his announcement of the 6-year, $75 million contract extension that now runs through 2028 with a club option for 2029. He said that he threw off a mound on Sunday, said he felt great. His role is to be determined if he can pitch at all. As per Snicker, all options are open, which potentially means we could see him go back to what we saw early in the season of him coming out of the bullpen if he doesn't get a start. But I also saw him on MLB Network saying that he feels better than he did, at some stretches of the season right now. So I think all things positive for him. But obviously, this is a continually big variable for the Braves in this series.
Yeah, and we'll have to monitor, I think, going throughout a start, if in fact he does start, which I anticipate him to make a start if he's healthy enough to do so. I think that it would be a lot of caution to just limit him to being a multi-inning relief option, because he is, statistically speaking, the best pitcher that you had all season long. And that's not a knock on Max Fried or 20-game winner Kyle Wright either. It's just, if you break it down, especially per start, and the fact that he didn't start very many games, or none in April, and very few until joining the rotation in late May. I mean, I talked to Alex Anthopoulos on Monday, and he said, look, if Spencer Strider started the season in the rotation, we might be talking about him in the Cy Young consideration and the Cy Young conversation, not just could this guy win Rookie of the Year. So it just goes to show you how important this guy's going to be and how pivotal it is for the Braves to be able to utilize him in the best way possible. I still believe that's as a starting pitcher. If he says he's healthy, he's passed all the tests. I think you have to clearly keep a close eye on him as he goes throughout that start. But when Spencer Strider starts a game, he gives the Braves a chance to win. And I think you've got to play that card here in the NLDS and see what he can give you, because again, I feel like he's clearly at the top or near the top or at the top of the Braves options as far as starters are concerned.
I'm going to waffle on who I give the edge here too, because I think it's going to come with an asterisk, because I think it's if Strider can't go or he's going to be coming out of the bullpen, I think it has to go towards. I mean, obviously Morton has a 5.47 ERA against the Phillies as well, and if you have to end up using Jake Odorizzi 9.35 ERA against them, obviously Bryce Elder could be in the mix there too. So small edge in my favor here towards the Phillies in terms of the rotation. So let's move to the bullpen. I mean, the Braves bullpen was absolutely fantastic. They were finished tied for second overall with a 7.6 fWAR, third in strikeouts per nine, fourth in ERA. 5 relievers in the top 16 in the league in FanGraph WAR with AJ Minter, Raisel Iglesias, Colin McHugh, NL saves leader Kenley Jansen, and rookie Dylan Lee. The Phillies bullpen is not the issue that it once was. A much stronger year for them. Certainly, they showed some improvement down the stretch. Alvarado came back from in a stint where they demoted him, and he was fantastic. He had a 1.77 ERA, 1.35 FIP, struck out 59 batters, allowed just 1 home run. So this is not the group that you're used to seeing. They finished 5th in the NL in FanGraph WAR, but I think the clear edge here has to go with the Braves in terms of the bullpens.
Yeah, I'm going to give the Braves the edge in terms of the bullpen, because I feel like they are coming into this postseason once again with a group similar to the one they had last year. Some of the names are the same, some of them are different, and some guys are in a different place than they were a year ago, where they've stepped up and done bigger things. And I'm pointing at AJ Minter as a guy that threw some huge innings, got some big outs for the Braves in the postseason last year, and did so as well in 2020, I might add. He was the Braves' best reliever for me, bell to bell, in terms of his overall consistency, the quality of the numbers. And clearly, if you look at wins above replacement, he's there as well. You have him along with Raisel Iglesias, who was an absolute must get for the Braves. I felt like at the trade deadline was a power right-handed arm to go into that bullpen and help set things up, and then have Kenley Jansen at the end with his, a long pedigree of being one of the game's better closers. That gives you the bones of what you need. And then you throw in what Colin McHugh and Dylan Lee and Jesse Chavez and other Braves relievers have given this club at times. It's just an extremely deep group. But the Phillies, they knew that this was a problem. They addressed their issue. They got Zach Eflin out in the bullpen. They went out and got David Robertson. I think that helped a lot. Sir Anthony Dominguez is a top quality reliever in my eyes. I know he's gotten blown up a couple of times, in fact, once against the Braves, but they do have the horses, as they say, to give the Braves some trouble in the late innings. But when I looked at that wild card matchup about which bullpen I wouldn't really want to dealt with, I would have said probably the Cardinals. And then, as things have it, the Cardinals had an epic meltdown in the first game, and it's one of the big reasons the Phillies are where they are. So I'm going to give the Braves the edge in this, but I will give the Phillies that all too important, that superlative of most improved in the National League. I think year over year, they finally addressed what had been one of the big stumbling blocks for them in putting together a winning ball club that we get to the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, right there with Iglesias, David Robertson was one of the biggest relievers to move at the deadline, and he's been a really nice addition for that group. It's really interesting that they move Eflin into the bullpen. He's been really effective. Guy throws a ton of strikes. You know what you're getting from him. So, obviously, and I mentioned what Alvarado's been able to do. So a much better group, but certainly the Braves have the edge there. So let's talk series predictions here. Grant, how long is this series going to go, and who's going to take it?
I think it's going to go 4 games. I think the Braves are going to take it in 4. That's my prediction here, and we'll see exactly how it plays out. But this home field advantage, the opportunity to rest, the hopeful return of Spencer Strider to making a big contribution to this club, and just the fact that the Braves, they're no longer in uncharted territory. They won it all last year, and I feel like that they've got the horses and they've got the team to do it again this year, and it all starts with winning the division series.
Yeah, there is a confidence without question among this group. We saw it during Monday's press availability. So I'm going to agree with you. The Braves are going to take this one in 4 and make a return to the National League Championship Series. So make sure you follow us all postseason long here on BPTV as the Braves look to end another campaign with some champagne. So turn on notifications, tell a friend, and help us grow this thing. Until next time, I'm Cory McCartney. He's Grant McAuley, and we'll see you soon, Braves country.